Welcome. Thank you for coming, everybody. I'm glad I know everybody here already. It makes me a lot more comfortable. But excited to be here. You guys all know who I am already. I'm CJ. My company is Christian Investment Analysis. We like to call ourselves CIA for short. You guys know my father, Kelly. He's my partner. We're the Christian Counterintelligence. If you haven't checked us out already, you can check us out at ciadc.co. That's not a typo. It's .co. I like to say it stands for Christian Organization. Well, tonight we're going to be talking about a lot of big numbers. We're going to be talking about millions. We're going to be talking about trillions. And I skipped on myself. Millions, billions, and trillions, right? Most of us will never work with any of those numbers. Maybe you'll work with millions if you work for a big company. But billions and trillions, these are the cumulative numbers of whole nation states. And the numbers are almost unfathomable. So I just want to do a little exercise to help you visualize in your head how big these numbers really are as you jump from 1 million to 1 billion to 1 trillion. So I have to borrow $100. Pop, I'm going to borrow $100, and I'm going to pay you back in 1,000,000 seconds. How long do I have to pay you back? How many days? Anybody want to take a guess?
30?
30 days. 11 and a half days. So I got 1,000,000 seconds to pay you back. You got 11 and a half days to pay back. That's not a bad deal, huh? Help me out, I borrow $100 in less than 2 weeks, I pay you back. Not a big deal. But what if I said, I'm sorry, I misspoke. I'm going to pay you back in 1,000,000,000 seconds. Not 1,000,000 seconds, 1,000,000,000 seconds. How many days do I have to pay you back? Anybody?
1,100?
11,500, which comes out to about 32 years. So 1,000,000 seconds, 11 and a half days. 1,000,000,000 seconds, 32 years. Now what if I said, oh, I'm sorry, I misspoke again. I'm going to pay you back in 1,000,000,000,000 seconds. Anybody want to take a guess? Can't be you. Over 11.5 million days, which comes out to 32,000 years approximately. And that's how big that number is. So if you had $1 million, you can spend it in 11 and a half days, or maybe just on one purchase. If you had $1 billion, it'd take you 32 years to spend that. If you had $1 trillion, you can never spend it. It'd take you 32,000 years to spend that kind of money. That help you visualize that vast sum of money that we're going to be talking about tonight. Because a lot of times we jump between millions, billions, and trillions, and we don't quantify that in our heads, and it's important to do that. So we can jump right into the presentation now, and we're going to be talking about Bitcoin and blockchain. And of course, in our first seminar was Bitcoin and blockchain. And the whole message was that you can have blockchain without Bitcoin, but you can't have Bitcoin without blockchain. Okay, blockchain is technology, and Bitcoin is currency. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit more about how blockchain is technology. Now, I'm sure you guys are here tonight because you're interested or you're supporting me, and thank you. And when you're reading about these things, you might come across what's called distributed ledger technology. And that is what Wall Street is rebranding blockchain as distributed ledger technology, or DLT. My guess of why they're doing that is because they want to bring the product mainstream, and the origins of blockchain has a lot of anarchy tied to it. A lot of anarchists, anti-government, anti-statist people, and Wall Street doesn't like push that type of brand because it goes against them. So they're remarketing it, rebranding it as distributed ledger technology. And before we get into permissionless and permissioned blockchains, I want to talk about the blockchain technology itself. Blockchain is just a database. That's all it is. You have the chain itself, a block, and the record. So if we use Bitcoin as an example, which uses blockchain as its record-keeping database, the record itself would just be the transaction. It would be person A is giving Bitcoin to person B. Wallet A is being credited, wallet B is being debited. And that's going to be the record, that's the transaction. Those transactions fill up the block. Once the block is full, it gets put into the chain to be linked with all the other chains. That's why it's called blockchain. And then it's actually an immutable record of that transaction. So now we can move back to permissionless versus permissioned blockchains. Permissionless blockchains are public blockchains like Bitcoin, Ethereum. That means that anybody with a computer can just turn their computer on and start mining Bitcoin or start keeping record of the transactions on the chain and being awarded for it. It's public, anybody can partake. A permissioned blockchain is private. That means that if you have a computer, you can't just hook up and participate in the network. It's not an open community. An example would be a company like IBM. And I'm sure some of you have heard of Watson, the AI smart computer that they built. Well, Watson will soon work with blockchain applications, and IBM will contract that technology out to companies to analyze their data, to run analytics, and to make their company run more efficiently. And that's the difference between a permissionless and a permissioned blockchain. Now, well, the example I used for the record was just the exchange of value on Bitcoin. Just one wallet sending Bitcoin to another wallet and that being the record. But that's the most simplest form. The record can actually be anything. And what we see being built on what's called Ethereum, which is a smart contract platform, are things called smart contracts. And smart contracts can do anything a real contract can do, except there's no human error, because it's all guided by code. That's what protects the blockchain itself, is the code. So this record can actually be a contract between two people, and that contract won't execute until all those stipulations are met. So let's say selling a house, selling a car, whatever it is, it can be put into a smart contract and then stored on the blockchain in an immutable, fraud-proof case. Now, how do we use that technology? Because you would think, maybe there's a limit to this. Maybe there's not a limit to this. But how do we use it? What do we do? A smart man told me once, if you want to do something, you find a problem and you fix it, or you find a need and you meet it. Well, I think we can all agree, after the midterm fiasco, that there might need to be an overhaul of our voting system. Well, blockchain would provide a fraud-proof, immutable record of voting. You would be able to have ID verification if it was necessary. You would be able to have immediate results, and of course those results would be public. Now, a voter's personal information would be kept secret in their own address and their own identity on that chain. But the results could be looked at by anybody, any citizen that wanted to log on could see live results. And they would be fraud-proof. And obviously, after these past elections, it seems as if fraud is running rampant. I think 53,000 dead people voted in Florida. So that's just unacceptable that can happen. And blockchain can be applied to what's going on in voting to get rid of the fraud, to make the results immediate and immutable, and also public, so we don't have to count on humans and worry about human error when it's all in the code. That's one application of blockchain. Another application of blockchain, which is definitely way bigger market and a way bigger effect on the market, is the medical field. I'm sure for some of you who are nurses or work in the medical field, you know the HIPAA laws. They're very serious about your information. They have to protect that information. They can get in a lot of trouble if they release information without your permission. Well, blockchain can be used to store all of your information. You can have your information stored on a blockchain, protected by the blockchain, and all those records can easily be transferred to whoever you grant access to. And typically, a wallet address is just a string of numbers, and it would be tied to an entity, a person or a company, and you would grant access to that string of numbers to your information. It's very simple stuff, but usually, you ever heard the term KISS? Keep it simple, stupid. Simple things work, and that's what we see here with blockchain. And the reason that we see it evolving and getting bigger in the industry right now is because it cuts down costs. It increases the bottom line of these corporations and companies, and that's their main goal. Their main goal is to make money. There's no debate there. They'll do anything to squeeze out an extra penny. Except with blockchain applications on medical records, they're not squeezing out pennies, they're squeezing out millions of dollars. Because you're eliminating, again, human error, you're eliminating fraud, which brings on lawsuits, and fines. You're eliminating a lot of things when you apply blockchain to medical. And this is not something of the future, this is happening right now. Timmy Health is a blockchain application that you can actually download on your smartphone, and you can get all your medicals on there. And what you can start to do, and this is, we see the benefit for the company side is they're reducing their costs. But the benefit for the consumer side is now you can start to monetize your medical data. Now you can actually start to make money off of the lifestyle that you live. See, everybody here is in a targeted demographic of some company. There's some company in the world that wants to sell you something, I can promise you that. Well, what they want to know about you is everything. That's why Facebook is so big. Facebook is a data mining company. They don't care about what you're doing on Tuesday night. They want to know, they want to data you, and they want to profile you, and they want to sell that profile to people who are trying to sell things to you. That's how they make their money. Well, in the medical field, you can use Timmy Health, and let's see, just use me, 28, thinks he's athletic, semi-healthy. There might be a company or a medical study that's interested in my medical data. They want to see, and I'm talking about everything, from DNA to blood type, all of my medical data. They can gain access to that data with my permission because they would compensate me. They would say, hey, we want to use your data. We're willing to compensate you. Are you willing to share your data? And you could say yes, and you would be compensated. So you can actually monetize your own health data, and that brings power to you and the health that you have. So that's blockchain for medical, and you can see that its application is very real, and Timmy Health is on the forefront of helping people monetize their data. And it's going to be big, because whenever a company can do good and the consumer can do good, that's what usually moves forward, and it's moving forward now at a very fast pace. So another application of blockchain is asset digitization, and that's just a really fancy way of saying digital property proof. That's all it is. It's a proof of ownership, and you can think in your head, if you have a car, you have a title. If you have a house, you have a deed. And imagine if all these things were not just a piece of paper that you would have to bring to the bank and sit down, and you're sitting there, they're sitting there, or they're in another room, and your lawyer's helping you do this, and the real estate agent's doing this is an escrow, that's over here. Well, now all of those things and all those extra parties that you have to pay to make that happen are now all done by a smart contract. So you send your deed into that smart contract, and then the person sends their funds to pay for the house into that smart contract. And when all the stipulations are met, like an inspector comes out and approves it, and all the other, then the transfer is initiated. And instead of paying a percentage to the bank and a percentage to the real estate agent, a percentage for closing and all that, you just pay one small smart contract fee. So, and again, it saves money for the real estate companies, because I'm not saying real estate companies are not going to exist. They are. But instead of having a bunch of real estate agents, they're going to be offering different types of smart contracts, and they're going to charge different percentages depending on what that contract is going to do. That's the future of asset digitization and applying blockchain to everything that can be an asset. So real estate is a great example, but the dollar is actually being digitized, and we'll talk about that in a little bit as we move into currency here. So Bitcoin is a currency. Blockchain is technology. That's the main difference. I believe Bitcoin is actually trading for above $4,000 right now. But anyway, it's close to $4,000 per Bitcoin. And I remember from last time, some people thought if you're going to buy a Bitcoin, you have to buy a full Bitcoin. That's not true. Bitcoin is divisible by 100 million units, and it's called a Satoshi. So you can actually buy one Satoshi, and it would probably only cost you a third of a penny. So you can buy $1 worth of Bitcoin, a penny worth of Bitcoin, $100,000 worth of Bitcoin. You don't have to buy just one Bitcoin. It's divisible up to 100 million units. That's one of the tools that makes it such a powerful currency. But what's important when you talk about currency is that there's two different kinds of currency. There's inflationary currency and there's deflationary currency. And up until now, we haven't seen any examples of a deflationary currency. It's been theory, but we haven't seen it in practice. And when you talk inflationary currency, we're talking about our regular fiat dollars in our pocket. You can print those dollars to increase the supply, and there's an unlimited supply. Well, what happens when they keep printing those dollars? The dollar in your pocket becomes worth less and less. You're getting robbed through that inflation, the inflationary nature of that currency. You're getting robbed of your purchasing power because of the amount of dollars they keep on printing, the amount of supply that keeps on increasing. And also silver and gold, which is much more time-tested money than fiat dollars, and silver and gold, but it's also inflationary because you can mine silver and gold, and there you can get more of it. Now, of course, when it comes to dollars, all they have to do is press a button or run the printing machine, and you got more dollars. But when you mine silver and gold, you have to hire people, you have to set up an operation. There's much more investment. And that's what makes silver and gold a much more better option for currency than fiat dollars. But when we talk about a deflationary currency like Bitcoin, we're talking about the exact opposite of what we just talked about. And we know that Bitcoin, it has a scheduled graduated increase in supply, meaning that every time that record goes into a block, and then that block gets pushed into a chain, the miner, the computer that processed that block, gets rewarded 12.5 Bitcoin. In a couple of months, in 16 months, that inflation rate, the creation of new Bitcoin, will actually be cut by 50%, and then miners will only be rewarded 6.25 Bitcoin per block. So I know that might be a little bit technical, so we'll just take a look at this. This kind of makes it easier. With the same $20, in 1929, you get a full basket of stuff. In 60, a little bit less. In 14, barely anything. In 18, barely anything. In 20, barely anything. You can pay attention here. I think it's really funny. I didn't make this, but whoever did has a good sense of humor. The shopping cart in 2018 is missing a wheel. And then in 2020, it's missing a wheel and then half the handlebar. And I think what he's trying to say is that once you get to that point, once you get to that level of inflation, the system's going to start breaking down. And unfortunately, we may be seeing that right now. But with Bitcoin, we see the opposite. In 2012, you could barely fill your cart. In 2013, you're walking home with a computer. In 2017, you're driving away in a car. In 2018, Bitcoin topped out at $20,000. For 10 Bitcoin, you have a beautiful single-family home. And in 2020, after the next Bitcoin halving, for those 10 Bitcoins, you'll probably be getting a mansion, not a single-family home. And for 1 Bitcoin, you'll be getting a sports car if you wanted it. I don't know who would. But anyway, inflation silently robs you of your purchasing power, and deflation protects you from that. And that's the difference between an inflationary currency and a deflationary currency. Now, thank goodness I know everybody here, and I know that everybody here is a patriot. I know that everybody here has that American hardworking spirit in them. And our founding fathers, they had that hardworking spirit too. And I think it's important to acknowledge what they said about banking, currency, debt, and credit. Because honestly, all of us are prone to the dumbing down of entertainment and everything else. These men were, I think if they were alive today, they would stand out as just pure genius. And people might actually be afraid of them because they would be so different. But Thomas Jefferson had this to say when it comes to currency. If the American people ever allow private banks to control the issue of their currency, and pay attention closely here, because this is a very important point I'm trying to make in this presentation. First by inflation, then by deflation. See, Thomas Jefferson, he wrote the Declaration of Independence. He knew what the Rothschilds did to the Bank of England. He knew how they bought the Bank of England basically by lying over the Napoleonic War, and then merged with the royals in England. So he knows how they work, and he knows what they're after. And he says, first by inflation, then by deflation. And fancy enough, the dollar is an inflationary system, an inflationary currency, and Bitcoin is a deflationary currency. So now we're seeing that new system come into play. We're starting to see the next step of the banking, first by inflation, then by deflation. They take control of you. And he says the banks, they will deprive people of all property until their children wake up homeless on the continent of their fathers conquered. The issuing power should be taken from the banks and restored to the people to whom it properly belongs. And that was in a debate over the 1809 bank bill. He also said that I believe that banking institutions are more dangerous to our liberties than standing armies. Some pretty powerful words from I would say, is a genius, a guy that was a genius and accomplished more than most people can hope to in their entire life. Here's another guy, James Madison. He says, history records that money changers have used every form of abuse, intrigue, deceit, and violent means possible to maintain their control over people. Oh, no, it doesn't say that, does it? The banks don't care about you. They're not trying to control you, because if they control the government, then they control you, because the government writes the laws and enforces the laws. The banks are not worried about us. They're controlling governments. You know, we're kind of playing checkers. They're playing chess. That's just the way it is right now. But he says that to maintain their control over governments, how? By controlling money and its issuance. So obviously we're seeing a trend here. Issuing money, controlling money, credit, debt comes with great responsibility, and it awards great power. Moving on to Abraham Lincoln. And fun little side fact here. A lot of people think Abraham Lincoln was assassinated because of his role in the Civil War and the Emancipation Proclamation. But in reality, Abraham Lincoln was going to create an American greenback. He was going to create an American currency that had nothing to do with banks and was controlled by the government. That played a large role in his death. That's a good thing to look into. But he said, the banks, oh no, here we go again. Not the banks, not no private bank. The government should create, issue, and circulate all the currency and credits needed to satisfy the spending power of the government and the buying power of consumers. By the adoption of these principles, the taxpayers will be saved immense sums of interest. Recently, the Fed has said they're going to raise interest rates, and if you're paying attention to that process, that the interest rate on our debt would actually outgrow our debt if they continued on the same schedule they have of interest rates right now. That's how you're really a slave to interest in the debt slave system. It said money will cease to become master and become the servant of humanity. But the main takeaway is that government should create, issue, and circulate all the currency and credits, not private banks or private institutions. Finally, we have Woodrow Wilson. And this is the man who signed the Federal Reserve Act in December 1913. That is the central bank of the United States that exists today. The Federal Reserve is the head of all the central banks in the United States. And it was created in 1913 when Woodrow Wilson signed the Federal Reserve Act. A couple years later, this is what he had to say about what he did. Mind you, this is a president and a pretty decent man. I'm a most unhappy man. I have unwittingly ruined my country. A great industrial nation is controlled by its system of credit. Our system of credit is concentrated. The growth of the nation, therefore, and all our activities are in the hands of a few men. We have come to be one of the worst ruled, one of the most completely controlled and dominated governments in the civilized world, no longer a government by free opinion, no longer a government by conviction and the vote of the majority, but a government by the opinion and duress of a small group of dominant men, also known as bankers. This is the man that signed the bill that created the Federal Reserve. Look what he has to say about it. Heed his warning. Understand what these central banks are out to do. They are out to control and they are out to manipulate. So, the Federal Reserve, privately owned. The Federal Reserve is as federal as Federal Express. It has nothing to do with the United States government. Matter of fact, the land that it's on in D.C., the United States laws don't even apply to the land that the building is on in D.C. They are their own entity. And what happens when you give an entity, honestly, a malicious entity like this, the power to issue money? Well, exactly what our founding fathers warned us happens. Look at the value of the dollar. In 1910, a dollar's worth a dollar. Well, 1913, what happened? Straight down. And then since then, the dollar has lost 96% of its value. And depending on what kind of numbers you want to use to try to calculate purchasing power today, the dollar has somewhere around between 4 cents to 11 cents of actual purchasing power. So if the worst case scenario were to happen and if the markets went into a recession and we had a little bit of a hyperinflationary period, everything would be pretty much times by 10 in the store. So imagine $20 a gallon gas, $20 loaves of bread. This is not far-fetched. This is reality based on the true purchasing power of the dollar because of how many dollars over the years the Fed has continually printed with no cap on the supply. They call it quantitative easing. And it would actually be helpful if the Fed was forced to print all the dollars that they created. But as you can see here, there's only about $1.4 trillion of currency in circulation. Yet, there's $11.1 trillion of value on the books. So, if they wanted to print all $11 trillion instead of just 1.4, it would take over 20 years of continuously running printing presses to print that money. So what we have here is they're printing a little bit of money, put into the economy, and mess with the money supply. And the rest of it, they're just typing into a ledger that's, they're not held accountable in this ledger to anybody but themselves, not even the government. And they're just creating dollars by pressing a number and then pressing enter. And you can see that pretty much 90% of the dollar value, like in that picture, the dollar is being digitized. The dollar is already 90% digital. There's a very small portion of cash that's actually involved with dollars in circulation. And what does that lead to? It leads to what you see here. And usdebtclock.org is a fantastic resource. I recommend that you check it out. I find myself looking on there probably once a week because it's live. The numbers update live and it keeps track of the budget and the deficit. Now, this is the budget deficit, 21.8 trillion. Here we go, talking about those crazy numbers, right? Remember, 1 trillion seconds is 32,000 years. We're talking about $28.1 trillion of debt, which actually comes out to approximately $180,000 of debt per person. So imagine if we actually defaulted on our debt and a country like China came over and said, well, you have a chance to pay your portion of your faith in the dollar. It's going to cost you 180 grand. And if you pay it, then your debt's forgiven. If not, then you can go over to that camp and start working off your debt. Of course, that's very far-fetched, but I'm just trying to make a point that the debt is so crazy that the government has spent $180,000 per person. Have you received $180,000 of benefits? Do you follow? It's not proportional to the money that they're spending. And of course, they're spending more than they're bringing in, which is always an accounting no-no. Some fun numbers I wanted to show over here. You can see the dollar supply added in 2018. $517 billion in 2018. Remember, 1 billion seconds, 32 years. We're still talking about a significant jump between a million and a billion. These are huge numbers. $517 billion added in 2018. How is it that the prices of things, of goods, keep going up so much? Why is it? It's almost a little bit more noticeable now than it's been in the past, isn't it? The reason is because of this right here. They are adding more money to our system than they ever had. Now, silver and gold. Everybody here, does everybody have some silver and gold at home? This is now a public service announcement because it's an official CIA recommendation that you hedge against this system with silver and gold. But I'm going to make it a public service announcement tonight, and thank you for showing up to let you know. You need silver. You need gold. It's unacceptable to not have either because it is such a secure hedge against anything going wrong with the fiat system. And if something were to go wrong, then you would see the true value of the ounce of silver is actually $578 per ounce. So if the true purchasing power of the dollar was taken into account, each ounce of silver would be selling for $578, not $15 like it's selling for right now. So, and gold selling for a little bit over $1,200 per ounce right now. would be selling for about $4,500 per ounce. That's the true value of gold and silver, according to usdebtclock.org, and those numbers are accurate. Now, I want to share another quote from a founding father. He says, there are two ways to conquer and enslave a country. One is by the sword, the other is by debt. And that was John Adams who said that. So I know you say, CJ, I understand the United States has a central bank. This is a problem because it's privately owned and we can't find anything out about it. And we have a huge debt. We have a $21.8 trillion budget deficit, and if you take into account liabilities, you're looking over $100 billion of debt. Well, I got some bad news for you. Has anybody ever heard of the International Monetary Fund, the IMF? It's the central bank of central banks. It is the central bank of central banks. There are central banks in almost every single country in the world, and they have the same scheme, the same game playing. Look at the trillions, not billions, trillions of dollars of debt that these countries have and owe to privately held and owned central banks. It is absurd how much money and debt they have allowed to be created in this system. Now, here's an interesting tidbit. In the year 2000, before 9/11/2001, there were 7 countries that didn't have Rothschild-associated central banks. Those countries were Afghanistan, Iraq, Sudan, Libya, North Korea, Iran, and Cuba. Well, fast forward 2018, 18 years later, and after the whole 9/11 fiasco, there's only 3 countries left now that don't have Rothschild-associated central banks. And those countries are North Korea, Iran, and Cuba. So you can bet your bottom dollar over the next 10 years, those are going to be the hot spots in the world because the bankers don't have control there. Again, I wanted to remind you what Thomas Jefferson said, that if the American people ever allow private banks, which we have, to control the issue of the currency, first by inflation, then by deflation. So we've seen the inflationary system. We've seen what they've done with it. We've seen the amount of control that they have gained with it, but we've also seen how big they've let that bubble become. Because we saw at each country trillions of dollars of debt, and if not trillions, hundreds of billions of dollars of debt, and soon to reach trillions. Well, these same bankers who set up this system, the inflationary system, they call Bitcoin a bubble. They call Bitcoin a Ponzi scheme. They call Bitcoin a scam. But when you're not looking, when you're not listening from the podium that they're speaking from, and they're being politically correct and saying all the right things, they are throwing their money into this ecosystem, into this cryptocurrency ecosystem, faster than I think I've ever seen anything. Granted, I'm only 28, and I've only been in finance for 6 years, but this is a large amount of money being thrown and invested into an ecosystem that they're telling you is a scam. Why? Because they're trying to get all the because it's finite. Unlike the gig they got going on now where they can just keep printing. There's a finite amount of these coins. And make no mistake, these same people who created the inflationary system are also the same people who created this deflationary system. Okay? And Bitcoin is not anywhere near being a bubble. And when we talk about bubbles, there's 2 kind of definitions, 2 connotations of a bubble. First is overall market cap. A bubble can refer to what is the overall market cap. Like Apple, we've heard recently Apple reached $1 trillion market cap, right? Became the first $1 trillion company. And that would be the definition of a bubble. Another definition of a bubble is something like this, where you have the internet bubble. You have a specific index, or you have a specific set of stocks, like internet-specific stocks, that actually blew up and became way overvalued, similar to what Bitcoin has done in the past in a typical market cycle. And if we go back here, I want to look at these because this is a little bit out of date. Bitcoin is actually down to a $80 billion market cap right now. So Bill Gates has more money than the entire market cap of Bitcoin, which is a currency that the bankers are setting up to gain even more control over the world. So that just shows you how early on we are in the process, how early on we are in the emergence of this future economy deflationary currency system. Jeff Bezos, you see there, at 112 billion. All cryptocurrencies at 202. Again, that's a little outdated. They're down to about 130 billion right now. Apple at $1 trillion, we just mentioned. Here we go. USD in circulation, 1.5 trillion. Market gold cap, 7.8 trillion. Physical money, meaning the notes and coins we use to exchange for goods and services on a daily basis, $34.4 trillion market. Stock markets, $67.5 trillion stock markets value all around the world. Then you take into all the money on all the books, and we're talking about an $86.5 trillion bubble, an $86.5 trillion market. And Bitcoin, again, right now, is at $80 billion, and all of cryptocurrencies that are $130 billion. And remember the difference between a billion and a trillion. It's very significant. You would need to get 10 times just to get to a trillion, and then you would need to get 86 more times growth to capture all the money in the world. So this is the very beginning of Bitcoin and the emergence of the bankers' deflationary system. And I think over the next 3 to 5 years, for people who are wondering where Bitcoin and the price is going to go, over the next 3 to 5 years, Bitcoin is going to start to capture the physical money bubble you see there. And if you think back to home phones, in the year 2000, everybody had a home phone, right? Everybody had a home phone. I remember my grandmother had the phone that still had the cord on it. Hers wasn't even cordless. It was still had the cord on it, and you had to do the twisty thing. And if you didn't have a home phone, you were crazy, because how are we supposed to get in touch with you? What's going on? I mean, you have to be, where you've been living under a rock, you don't have a home phone? Well, today, nobody has a home phone. Today, it's all cell phones. Everybody has cell phones. But nobody can pick one day or one specific point in time or one quarter where they said, okay, home phones died, cell phones took over. That was the thing. It was just like kind of one day you woke up and you're like, oh, there's no home phones left. Everybody's got a cell phone now. Well, the same thing is going to happen with cash. Right now, everybody is saying, oh, no, you're not using cash. What are you using? What are you, crazy? What if there's an emergency? What if this? What if that? It's contrarian. It goes against what the world would call common sense, because they're like, everything is cash, come on. Well, the same thing is going to happen 5 to 10 years from now as this emerging asset class starts to gain part of this market share. And before you know it, people won't be using cash, and Bitcoin will be part of everyday life. And nobody will point back and go, man, when did this happen? Cash will just fizzle away, similar to how home phones fizzle away and everybody has a cell phone. That's what we're going to see here. And in the long term, like I said, over the next 3 to 5 years, Bitcoin's going to start to capture that physical money, that $34.4 trillion market cap. It's going to start to capture some of that market. And in the long term, in the 5 to 10 year period, not only Bitcoin as a currency, but Bitcoin as a currency being used in tandem with medical blockchain data and with asset digitization, it's going to be able to start to capture the $86.5 trillion market, which is all money. So the potential for growth in Bitcoin is almost indescribable. The difference between a million seconds and a trillion seconds is almost the difference between where Bitcoin is now to where it's going to be 10 years from now. And we'll take a look at this internet bubble here, because Bitcoin usually went through a market cycle, and market cycles are standard. I mean, everybody here can think back in their life, and you got a handful of times that you can remember the stock market crash, the real estate market crash, there was some kind of recession. I mean, everybody has these memories, because you know why? The system is designed that way. The bankers benefit off of that kind of design. If they bought at point A and all it did was go up to point Z and they finally sold, yeah, sure, they would have made some good money. But how did they make a lot of money? By buying at point A, selling at point B, buying at point C, selling at point D, buying at point E, selling at point F. These market cycles are manufactured, and these market cycles are used by these people to generate huge amounts of wealth, not just buy, hold, and sell one day. generate huge amounts of wealth. These cycles, it's actually in business, they refer to it as the 7-year business cycle. And that's why if you're following the stock markets today, a lot of commentators are saying the stock market might pull back. There's a very high chance that the stock market's going to pull back, and they say that because typically the market runs in 7-year cycles, and we're on year 10 now. So we're about 3 years overdue. So, you know, to them it's a safe estimate to say that. But what we see here is that the S&P hit 1,600 points, and within 2 years, it was back down to 827. That's a complete crash, because this index was brought all the way up by these internet stocks, and then it crashed down. And let's just take a look at some of the opportunities that were available during this market cycle. Because today, during the Bitcoin market cycle that we're in right now, very similar opportunities exist. You can see the title here, it says, How Even the Leading New Economy Stocks Ruined Investors. And in the future, I'm sure at a presentation or seminar a year or two from now, we're going to be looking at a chart that says how even the leading new digital currencies ruined investors. And if we take a look at Amazon, the high in 2000 was $75.25 a share. The high after the crash in 2001, 2002 was $5.51 a share. You lost 98.7% of your investment in Amazon. Now that's absurd, right? Because we know Amazon is one of the biggest, most successful companies in the world today. But at one point in time, as an Amazon investor, you could have lost 98.7% of your money. And Bitcoin right now is down about 80%. So this is a bloodbath. This is a real bloodbath right here. Now, if you had put $5,000 into Amazon.com at $75.25 and it crashed, and you said, well, why would I sell anyway? I only got a couple dollars left, I'll just hold on to it. Or you actually believed in the technology, and you said, no, I believe in this, I see where it's going, I'm going to try to buy some more and get my dollar cost average down. But if you only had $5,000 and you bought at the high, and you were patient enough to wait till today, that $5,000 would be worth upwards of about $93,000 right now. And if you were smart enough to look at the market and say, internet is the future, internet shopping is the future, I'm going to buy Amazon, and you bought it at $5.51, and you spent that same $5,000 and you bought Amazon at $5.51. Today, that investment would be worth over $1.3 million. So that's the power of market cycles. That means that $5,000 on average earned about $100,000 for you each year. That's a phenomenal investment. And we see these same opportunities in the market cycle that we're in right now in Bitcoin. And here's the psychology of a market cycle. And you can see where I have us. We are here. I know this is a little bit hard to see, but just bear with me here. When you first get into these market cycles, you start really where you end, in disbelief. And then you move towards hope, and then you move towards optimism, and then you move towards belief, and then you move towards thrill, and then eventually euphoria. Euphoria is the stage that we were in January, where everybody and their mother knows about Bitcoin. You check out at Publix, and the cashier is telling you about how his life is going to be changed by Bitcoin. Then the market cycle continues on, and the asset declines, and you go through complacency, anxiety, denial, panic, and where we are right now is called capitulation. Now, our last seminar, Bitcoin was at $6,000, and it held at that point for a pretty long time. A lot of people thought that that might be a bottom, and if it was a bottom, it would have been a phenomenal bottom, considering where Bitcoin how early it is in Bitcoin's stage. But what we saw was capitulation. We saw people at 6,000, and they said, if this goes down anymore, I can't lose anymore. I just can't do it. I need to sell now, and then hope it goes down, and maybe I can buy back in. Or I need to sell now and run as far away from this market as I can. That's called capitulation. So this is where we are in the psychology of the Bitcoin market cycle right now. So you can see over the course of the next, really, I'm going to put a time frame on it for you, so you know how much time you have here. Really, over the course of the next year is going to be the best time to pick up Bitcoin before it goes into its next market cycle. And each time that this cycle has happened in Bitcoin, we've seen a significant increase in the value of Bitcoin. So the chart you're looking at there on your left is a Bitcoin halving chart. So you remember not too long ago I said that if you have your computing power and you're taking that record and you're putting it in the block and then you mine that block and you put it on the chain, then the miner gets a reward for putting that block on the chain of 12.5 Bitcoin. Well, at the darkest blue dot, we have something coded into Bitcoin. And what we have is, we have the inflation schedule coded into Bitcoin. Inflation gets cut at the darkest blue dot by 50%. So in the very beginning, you were getting 50 Bitcoin per block mined. Then at dot number 1, it got cut down to 25 Bitcoin. That made Bitcoin that much more rare, that much harder to get. What happened to it? The price increased logarithmically. It jumped up big time, from $10 all the way up to almost $2,000. Then what happened? It went through its next market cycle. It cooled down, and it prepared for the next cut to inflation, right? And this is what the central bank does. They messed with inflation rates. They mess with interest rates. They mess with money supply. And we know we can point the finger at them in their inflationary system. But guess what? In their deflationary system, it's coded into it. The cycles that they use, they manipulate in the real world are actually coded into Bitcoin. You can't point your finger at anybody. And after that second halving there, Bitcoin went from being just under, that's actually close to where I got in Bitcoin, just under $1,000, and then of course it went up all the way to almost $20,000. And right now, we're on the tail edge of that market cycle, the cool down. And in another 16 months, at point number 3, we will get another dark blue dot, which signals that a halving, a 50% cut to inflation, and miners will only be rewarded 6.25 Bitcoin per block instead of 12.5. What will happen after the halving is Bitcoin gets that much more rare, that much more harder to get, and its deflationary nature will cause it to rise in value. Whereas with dollars, they keep printing more, and with an inflationary currency, the value of that, the purchasing power of that dollar keeps dropping. Well, the purchasing power of Bitcoin is coded to grow over time. And what we see here in the chart to the right is where I have the number 1 from the first halving. That's that little blip there that you see on that Bitcoin performance chart. And that was from pennies. Bitcoin was at pennies, and it went to over $10. And as you know, with investments, it's all about percentages. So you're still talking about hundreds of thousands of percent gain. It doesn't matter that it would only cost pennies. It matters how much percent it increased. That generated many millionaires. Then you move forward to the second halving, and you see it here on the chart where the halving took place, and then the exponential, the market cycle is what you're seeing. The exponential rise and then the cool down of the asset, getting prepared to go into the next coded market cycle, which will take place at that third point. And the second increase after that created many billionaires. And I'll tell you something right now, during the third halving, the first trillionaires from cryptocurrency are going to come into existence based off of the next halving. So I just want let that sink in for a minute, that these bankers, first, Thomas Jefferson warned us, first they're going to hit us with an inflationary system, then they're going to hit us with a deflationary system. And the inflationary system has pretty much been maxed out. I mean, the dollar, the purchasing power of the dollar is down to pennies. So how much more time is really left for that kind of system? See, the banks have used their financial tools to control governments and have created a huge credit bubble on which they charge interest and enslave, manipulate, and control nations. Now, this says, what if Bitcoin isn't the bubble, it's the pin? I disagree with this. I think that Bitcoin is not going to pop the current system because it's about the same people. What you're going to see is a merging of that system, like we just talked about earlier. The home phones fizzled out, and the cell phones fizzled in. Well, cash is going to fizzle out, and digital currency is going to fizzle in. And paper trails, whether it's medical records or stock certificates or titles and deeds, are going to phase out, and digital property proof is going to fizzle in. And the emergence of these two systems really is proof that what they have done, what the bankers have done, is exactly what Thomas Jefferson said. They have exploited governments and people with their inflationary system, And now they're introducing their deflationary system, which at first empowers people. It really does. It empowers you, it frees you from that debt system. But in the long run, it's of our opinion that this system is actually going to be used to completely control people, because one characteristic of the dollar is fungibility, meaning that that dollar, it can pass from a little kid to an ice cream man, and then an ice cream man to a store, and then a store to another guy, and then another guy to a terrorist. And then from a terrorist back to another store, and then to another farmer, and then back to a candy store. That's called fungibility. It doesn't matter where that dollar's been or whose hand it's been in, it's always worth $1. Well, with Bitcoin, it is 100% traceable. You can't hide anything on the public ledger. Anybody can hook up to that ledger, and if they know your wallet address, they can find out everything about that address. There is nothing you can hide. So even though Bitcoin is an escape from the debt-based system and the inflationary currency that is the fiat dollar, it is actually a system of control and a system that strips you of your privacy and allows the overlords, I guess it would be a good word for them at that point in time, the bankers, to track every single thing you do. It's a very dangerous system that we see emerging here, but it's also a great opportunity to prepare, because it's going to take years for this process to happen. It's not just going to happen overnight. Bitcoin's not just going to come pop the bubble and then we're going to have an Armageddon and then we're going to have peace and prosperity. It's going to take years for these systems to integrate, and that's by design. So what you want to be able to do as this system is emerging is you want to find a good resource. You want to find somebody that you can trust and have a similar worldview with as you're trying to prepare yourself spiritually, mentally, and financially for what's coming down the pipeline. And that's why I want to review what you receive as a CIA member. And we have a few CIA members here tonight. We have Pastor and Jack. And the platform is designed to give you the tools that you need to feel comfortable and the tools that you need to empower yourself to learn and get educated about blockchain and make the right decisions for your family. So some of the benefits that you get as a member are the cryptocurrency portfolio. So I'm sure most of you are aware there's more cryptocurrencies than Bitcoin. Right? There's about 6,000 cryptocurrencies that were in existence in December. Right now, after this recent pullback, there's only a little over 2,000 cryptocurrencies in existence. But you might as well take a dart and just throw it at the board, right? No, absolutely not. There are specific projects and coins that these bankers are planning to use to control and manipulate, not people, governments. And those are the coins that we're investing in. One more thing I want to say about the cryptocurrency portfolio is that we have 24 coins that are actively being invested in and that are allocated, and we have another 20 coins that I call are on the radar, or projects that we're keeping our eye on. So that there's approximately 50 coins that we're keeping our eye on right now out of over 2,000 coins, and we believe those coins are going to play a big role in the future. You also get access to the stock portfolio, which I mentioned earlier, companies like IBM. I'd like to share that with you. Thank you for showing up. IBM is a smart investment. Okay, IBM has Watson, one of the smartest artificial intelligence applications in the world. They're going to be combining that technology with blockchain technology and also the Internet of Things, interconnected devices. And there'll be a permission blockchain, a private blockchain, where they sell contracts to companies to use that tech to make their company more efficient and increase bottom lines. So you'll receive the stock portfolio, which has about 10 companies right now, including IBM. You'll also receive the premium portfolio overviews, both crypto and stock, meaning I'm not just going to just write these coins down. What we do is we say, these are the coins that we believe the banks are creating and being involved with. And here's the percentage of your overall funds that should go into Bitcoin. Here's your percentage of that fund that should go into X and X and X. And we tell you what percentage allocation for each coin, but also we do an overview where we tell you about the coin and about the company. So you not only know what to invest in and how much to invest in, but why to invest in it. And also you receive market analysis. And our market analysis is everything from chart analysis to news analysis, even to opinion. But it's all based on market research. And of course, you know, I research financial markets, religion, politics with a very biased biblical worldview. And also diversification strategy. Now, I already shared with you tonight as a public service announcement because nobody knows what's going to happen, but you should have silver and gold. That's one of our strategies. One of our strategies is hedge yourself with silver and gold. There's also other strategies, but it's important. You don't put all your eggs in one basket, right? That's just, everybody knows you never put all your eggs in one basket. So you want to be able to diversify. And also, once you start making some money, you don't want to be over-allocated into any one asset class. Real estate, precious metals, there's many different asset classes that you can invest in to protect and preserve your wealth through this transfer of the inflationary system to the deflationary system. Also, the community forum, where you'll be able to reach out to me or my father personally for our help as a consultant. We are a consulting company. That's what we do. So you can reach out to us and we're going to help you with any roadblocks or whatever you might have. You also get beginner guides, tips and tricks, and a cryptocurrency dictionary. So beginner guides are just guides to help you set up your wallets, set up your accounts. Just make it easy for you so that you don't have to figure out too much and you have a nice step-by-step way of setting up your accounts and feeling comfortable you're doing it the right way with the right companies. And also, tips and tricks. I mean, I've been involved in this market in crypto, it's like, they call it like dog years, right? Dog years, like 1 year is like 7 years. Well, crypto years, it's like 7 market years. One crypto year feels like 7 market years, I'll tell you, it's crazy. The tips and tricks I have learned from the mistakes that I made. I made a lot of mistakes because it's an emerging market. The technology is not so user-friendly right now as it's emerging. But you won't have to learn from your mistakes. You can learn from our mistakes. And also, last but not least, is the ever-expanding cryptocurrency dictionary. This is an emerging market, and there's new jargon that comes out every single day. Like, for example, distributed ledger technology. Wall Street is rebranding blockchain as distributed ledger technology, so that has to go into the dictionary. You can come to refer to the dictionary so that when you're doing your research, staying up on the news, you can understand what's being talked about. And just briefly, I'm going to go over pricing details. So for the full membership pricing for the CIADC is $100 a month or $250 a quarter. So if you pay quarterly, you save $200 a year. A lot of other financial research firms charge thousands of dollars for their research, and that's all you get, a special report or this or that. With CIA, if you pay quarterly, it's $1,000 a year, and you get everything we produce, special reports, all of our analysis. If you're with us, you're with us. That's how we feel. We don't believe in upselling. But also, we understand that that's not a small amount of money. That's a significant amount of money. And we understand that everybody might not be able to afford that or might not be ready to make that investment. So what we've done is we've created some stepping stones to membership. And on patreon.com, and I'll email all these links to you. Just leave your email on the back table there and I'll make sure you get all these links. We have a platform where we update what I call news analysis. So we have our market analysis. And in the market analysis, I'm talking about the market. And I'm producing research and analytics and making conclusions and summaries based on those analytics, based on the market. But also the news. We know we have a fake news problem today, right? We know we have a fake news problem. Well, those people who lie to you maliciously about mainstream headlines, they're not telling you the truth about finance either. Don't be fooled. The numbers on the screen are the only thing true when you're watching financial news. Everything else is honestly, it's biased. So what we did was for $1 a month, you can have access to the CIA news analysis. So on our website, we have a news page where we post news stories that are relevant to the market. And the news analysis takes it one step further. So instead of just reading that article and maybe not getting that much from it, the news analysis, we dive into that article, we break it apart, we show you what ports are important, why it's important, how it can affect your investments, or what opportunities there might be in this news. And that's for $1 a month. And then for $9 a month, you'll have access to the news analysis as well as our upcoming D-Finance courses. It's a combination of defy and finance. Definance. We want to defy the financial norms to survive and thrive. And this is actually a new announcement tonight that we're announcing here at this seminar, that this Defy online courses. And defying financial norms to survive and thrive. I'm sure all the founding fathers would agree with this picture. The system isn't broken. It was made this way. And what we want to do is we want to reach out to our local community and we want to free you from that debt slave system. We want to free you from it. And you can begin, again, at patreon.com. I'll send these links out to you. But the finance is going to be made up of educational videos, everything from budgeting, saving, investing, all the way to banking, economics, and financial planning. Also, there'll be online instructional videos with how to get started with a broker like E-Trade or TD Ameritrade, or even how to get started in crypto with like Coinbase or any other exchange. And one thing that we're offering for this, again, it's $9 a month to get access to these courses. However, if you come to Christ Community Church in person, we are going to be teaching these very same classes for free. We want to reach out to our local community and we want to empower them with this knowledge. What I've done is, basically, I've taken my $70,000 education and I've gotten rid of all the brainwashing and all the university liberalism, and I put in the meat and potatoes of finance into these online educational and instructional videos so that you have the right tools to be successful even if you don't have a bachelor's or a master's or you've never even really understood finance. You're still going to have the understanding you need to make the right decisions for you and your family. So we're very excited about the finance, and we think that it has large potential in our community because honestly, a lot of people live paycheck to paycheck, and they don't really know how to manage their money. And that's what we want to do. We want to empower them to be able to manage their money. But most importantly, we want to wake them up to the fact that Jesus Christ is Lord, and that if you're not right with Him, your money will never be right. So that's it. That's the whole seminar. That's the whole presentation. I hope you were able to get some beneficial information out of this. And I want to remind everybody that when you leave, in the back, just go ahead and write your emails down on that list because I have a bunch of links I'm going to send you, including the promise that I made to you tonight. I said if you came here tonight that you would learn how to make $35 in free crypto, how to claim $35 in free crypto. So Coinbase has a $10 free Bitcoin promo going on, and a company called Blockchain has a $25 free Stellar crypto promo going on. And I'm going to send you those links in the email where you'll be able to sign up for Coinbase and submit your email for Blockchain, and you will receive $35 in free crypto. So make sure you sign that list, and we'll be able to take advantage of that opportunity. And thank you again very much for coming out. This is how you tell. 6 months ago, there was barely an empty seat in these pews when we had our first seminar. And this is how you can tell where we are here in this market cycle. Because if we were in the euphoria stage, there would be a line out that door to get access to this kind of content and information. But this is just proof in the pudding that we are actually at the bottom of this market. And if you were ever going to invest in digital currencies, now and over the next year are going to be your best opportunity to get in before the next cycle begins. And remember, those cycles are coded into Bitcoin. All right, so does anybody have any questions? I know I touched on a lot of things. I know the technology sometimes can be a little bit confusing, and that's why Wall Street is rebranding it and making it easier. They want you to be able to just log into your 401 and buy some Bitcoin, not have to jump through all the loops that you have to jump through now. Any questions?
How do you use Bitcoin to buy things? And
That's a great question, because right now Bitcoin can be used to purchase real estate. It can be used, I live off of my cryptocurrencies. I trade in my currencies. I don't listen to my own advice, and I keep all my eggs in one basket, and I live off the cryptocurrency because I don't trust the banking system. That's me. That might not be right for you, and that's not what we recommend. But right now, Bitcoin can easily be traded for fiat dollars, and then you can use those fiat dollars to buy whatever you want. There's also companies like Propy.com, Propy.com, where it's all real estate listings only for Bitcoin. But we're so early in the market right now that your question, it becomes very valid, because I can't take Bitcoin and go to Walmart and buy what I need. I can't take Bitcoin and go to Publix and buy what I need to live. So right now, it's more of an investment tool. It's more of a hedge against the market. But Bitcoin, remember, is a currency. And just like old phones fizzled out and cell phones fizzled in, the cash will fizzle out. And this deflationary currency will replace the inflationary currency that the bankers use to control and manipulate governments. Any other questions? Nothing? All right, well, thank you so much for coming out. If you haven't checked out my website, www.ciadc.co, please check it out. Send it to your friends and family. Any other questions? Nothing? All right, well, thank you so much for coming out. If you haven't checked out my website, www.ciadc.co, please check it out. Send it to your friends and family, because Bitcoin, I want to make sure I say this the right way. Bitcoin is going to change the world. And I think a lot of people that you listen to are going to tell you that Bitcoin is going to change the world in a good way. And I think in the next 3 to 5 years, it does change the world in a good way. And a lot of people wake up to the corrupt banking system right now. However, once you get to that asset digitization stage, when you start having the assets being digitized, title transfers being digitized, now you're starting to lose your privacy. Now you're starting to, for the ease and convenience of the system, and for the less cost of the use of the system, you're giving up your privacy. And we all know that when you give up privacy, you give up your freedom.